Rastafari, King Selassie, rule of rulers, Emperor Haile Selassie, I give thanks above it and I. Rejoice not when your enemies fall, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles. Lest the Lord see it, and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. Rastafari. Fret not yourself because of evil men, neither be you envious at the wicked. For there shall be no reward to the evil man, the candle of the wicked shall be put out. My son, fear you the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change. For their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knows the ruin of them both. Ra supporting, giving thanks, Jaja run things, head at a time, every step of the way. Going back into the situation with ISIS, you know, you have to keep this in mind. This isn't just about this group. First of all, this group doesn't even exist, as we reported, but it's all about the security measurements around the world, the global lockdown. You know, Ruppersberger, he's a senator, he's busy, you know, giving talks to train kids into cyber activities. In other words, they got certain schools for these kids to go into for cyber control. See, they want to control everybody through digitalization. That's pretty easy for them because they're putting in a chip in everything. And it's my understanding, overstanding, that soon the chip will be put into everyone. You got the Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson. He's saying things like, the reason for this action is self-evident. The continued public calls for terrorist organizations for attacks on the homeland and elsewhere, including law enforcement and other government officials, with the acts of violence targeted at government personnel and installations in Canada and elsewhere recently. So you had a situation with a guy in Austria, I think Austria. He was a 17-year-old. He went to go fight with the ISIS. They had this big propaganda video. A 17-year-old sitting there, you know, he's got all these big ISIS fighters all surrounding him, right? He's the only white face in the mix. And he's going, oh, we're going to plant our flag on Buckingham Palace, and then we're going to come and plant our flag on the White House. So you get people that are actually afraid of this. They actually think that this is like a serious threat. Jay Johnson also called on law enforcement nationwide to be on the lookout for small-scale attacks like the one in Canada by a lone offender or a small group of individuals. So there you go. It's not about ISIS. They needed to find an indirect way to implement their security. Everybody was screaming 1984. It wasn't exactly good timing for them, you know, with Ed Snowden. And so now they got to find a justifiable means to be able to continue on their course, because the technology's there. Technology is like a pesticide, you know, it spreads, right? If you don't find a way to control it, it's just going to spread and get out of control. And that's exactly what is going on right now. Their technology, they have the companies, they have the patents, they have the men behind it, and of course they have the Pharisees working to push the legislation, and that's how it goes down. So, a couple more facts that I uncovered about ISIL, or ISIS, I call them ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham, is that they have been using chlorine gas. They've been found to use chlorine gas, or at least attempted to use chlorine gas earlier this year, and they used chlorine gas against security officials in Shiite armed forces. Now, why don't we hear about this on the mainstream news? All we see is you know, a partial beheading. We heard about the chlorine attacks over a year ago now, and that was supposed to be the rationale to go in and bomb Syria in the first place. And then they had to come up with this ISIL scheme. It was the covert action plan, you know, blah blah. You know, it's my determinacy that anybody who's educated in this country understands now that this is an intelligence operation, intelligence behind it, but is just afraid to say it. In the moment people speak on it, you know, they're labeled to be part of the problem, and instead of labeled to be a solution. But how can you come up with a solution if you don't understand what the problem is to begin with? See, here's another fact that I uncovered. The Syrian forces last year actually killed the top Al-Qaeda official. His name is Abu al-Sharari. He is known as the Bin Laden of Syria, and he was a student of Bin Laden. He is said to have slaughtered scores of civilians and government forces across Syria. So it was the Syria government forces that went in and took this man out. His name is Abu Malik al-Shari. And we didn't hear nothing about that. We didn't hear nothing about the top Al-Qaeda official being killed in this war. Why? Because it wasn't killed by the American forces. And who was he working for? So they've now taken control of another gas field. There's a series of photos posted on social media by the ISIS purported to show the Shara gas field, the bodies of Syrian soldiers, and seized weaponry. They seized 5 tanks, 2 infantry combat vehicles, machine guns, and ammunition. So again, it's back to the infrastructure of the Assad regime. That's the target. You know, first of all, the American forces, we put the weaponry into Iraq, and then the ISIS turned around after had been in Syria, turned around and fought in Iraq. Why was that? Why did they go and seize that material in Iraq? Because they needed it. They were getting their ass beat out of Syria. They were desperate. And so we opened the gate for them to come and take that material. That's why it's the intelligence operation. Now, how much money is that going to cost taxpayers? And we're going to have to refuel the Iraqi government with more weaponry. They've been finding mass graves, 150 members of Iraqi Sunni tribes. So now, see, that's the thing, is they're killing their own Sunnis. The Al-Qaeda has said they've had to have a clash with Al-Qaeda because Al-Qaeda, the leader, Zawahiri, has said that, you know, this is not acceptable. This is not part of the faith to kill your own Muslim brothers. Now, I don't know that much of the detail about Zawahiri's ideology. I believe that he's an official terrorist, if you will, because he's not being promoted very much. So, in other words, I don't think he has intelligence behind him. But he does have at least 1 or 2 interviews on YouTube, and he was Bin Laden's second-hand man, as far as I can see. Now, why has the attention gone off him so much and onto some of these other people? Like, for instance, the guy that's as we're told, beheaded James Foley. I mean, he got a lot more attention than Zawahiri has gotten on our mainstream media. So you have to keep these things in check. You always have to remember, like, where's the light going? Where's the limelight going? Not the light from Jah, but the artificial light from man. Where is it being shined on? That's what we have to pay attention to. Who's ever being shined on is usually the Khan, is usually the front man. And like I said, Zawahiri's against us, but they're actually calling now to join with the forces of this group that's called ISIS, and come up with a new team to directly attack the Western interests. And that is directly a result of the recent bombings that we've conducted over there. They've seen this as a threat to their newly formed civilization. You have to understand, even though intelligence is behind it, it doesn't mean that everybody who's fighting in this crew understands what's going on or overstands. They don't get it. They don't understand. You see, they think that they're really fighting for this caliphate. They don't know that they've been drawn in there through intelligence in order to be killed or to fight for the Western interests. See, that's the goal. They're going to use these people to fight for them. And it's blown up in their face because the group has been divided in itself, and we're going to keep covering that. Egypt's warned that terrorist groups are poised to seize control of Libya's oil fields as the country's foreign minister appealed for an expansion of Western-led campaign against ISIL to tackle extremism threatening North Africa. So now you have the Egyptian, which is British rule, is asking to use the forces to tackle these other issues in the region, coming into Africa now. So you see how it spreads, right? You see how this spreads, just like a pestilence.